Have you ever found yourself in a discussion where, even after saying everything you needed to, you walked away feeling like you lost? Have you ever felt that knot in your throat, as if every word spoken had pushed you further from your own strength? Perhaps you're surrounded by people who speak loudly, interrupt, mock, and dominate environments with arrogance disguised as confidence. Maybe deep down you believed that staying silent was weakness, that not defending yourself was surrendering, that not reacting was losing. But what if I told you that all of this is an illusion? That true power has never been in words, but in their absence. One of history's most misunderstood philosophers saw something that few have courage to admit. Those who talk too much reveal too much. Those who need to convince are already at a disadvantage. The world teaches us we must fight, explain ourselves, defend our ideas as if every conversation were a battle for truth. But philosophy proposes something different, a more subtle, more lethal, and infinitely more intelligent path. Great thinkers believed that silence is not just absence of noise, but overwhelming presence. Silence disconcerts, destabilizes, forces others to confront themselves. This video is for you who constantly feel ignored, overshadowed, invalidated. For you who leave conversations feeling no one really heard what you meant to say. For you who are tired of being the easy target, the nice one, the one who tries keeping peace while others take advantage of your calm. Perhaps you've confused your silence with submission. Today I'll show you that silence can be your most powerful weapon, and that true victory doesn't come from winning arguments, but from never needing to enter them. Get ready to see silence in new light, not as absence of response, but as the definitive response. Why we feel the need to respond. Why do we feel such need to respond, rebut, correct, prove we're right? Because deep down we've been conditioned to believe truth must be defended tooth and nail, that if we remain silent, we're allowing others to win. Philosophy sees this as a symptom of our deepest weakness, fear of appearing weak. Behind this fear lies the ego, a fragile ego that cannot stand being questioned, that confuses disagreement with attack, turning any conversation into battlefield. Philosophical wisdom shows that most people don't seek truth when they argue. They seek power. They seek to reaffirm beliefs not because they're solid, but because if shaken, everything crumbles. Argumentation, in this sense, isn't a tool of wisdom. It's defensive armor, a desperate cry from ego to maintain narrative control. What does this mean? When you feel compelled to justify yourself, to prove your point, you've already entered their game and lost. The simple need to justify your position shows you're still trapped in desire to be accepted, validated, understood. Psychology calls this herd morality, behavior of those who live under others' expectations, who want to be seen as good, correct, just. But this quest for approval is exactly what keeps you weak. True strength lies not in convincing others, but in not needing to do so. It's holding your vision even facing laughter, criticism, rejection. It's being misunderstood and remaining unshaken. What philosophy proposes is power not measured in verbal victories, but in internal mastery, power that comes from ability to remain calm while everyone around loses control. Power that grows when you stop reacting. If you really want to win, understand this. The game of discussion is theater, and the first to stand up to act has already lost. Philosophy knew that reactive mind is subjugated mind, observing mind. That's the dangerous one because it's above the need to prove anything. The superior individual. Philosophy didn't write for the weak. It wrote for the few who have courage to look within, confront their own misery, and transform it into strength. For philosophy, common humans live trapped by conventions, moralism, and need for others' applause. But there exists another type of being, rare, dangerous, free. The superior individual doesn't live by reacting to the world. They shape the world in their image. The most impressive part? They often do this in complete silence. The superior individual doesn't need to win debates, doesn't engage in cheap emotional games. They observe, understand, carefully choose when to speak, and, more importantly, when to remain silent. They've understood something others ignore. Silence is a form of language that doesn't try to convince, it imposes presence. The silence of the superior individual isn't empty. It's a threat, It's authority, it's the sound of self-mastery. While others shout, they command respect with their gaze. While others explain, they observe and reveal others' weaknesses merely with their calm. Their silence is a wall. Those on the other side despair, trying to guess what lies behind it. In that despair, they make mistakes, reveal too much, lose balance. This silence isn't passivity, it's absolute control of one's own energy, strategic economy. The superior individual knows every spoken word is revealed move. Every emotional reaction is exposure of weak point. That's why they remain quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't need to say anything. They've transcended the need to prove something to someone. Their presence already speaks for them. More than that, it disturbs, because their silence forces others to look within, to deal with their own noise. In a society of noise, those who master silence are kings. Philosophy saw the superior individual as one who creates their own values, rules, morality. They don't depend on anyone's validation, and that's why they're feared. Because nothing destabilizes more than individual who cannot be manipulated by guilt, fear, or need for acceptance. Their silence is shield against all these mechanisms. When they speak, it's because their words will topple an empire. The psychology of silence. But what makes silence so unsettling for others? Why do so many feel threatened when someone simply chooses not to react? Silence is not just absence of sound. It's a mirror, and what it reflects for many is unbearable. When you choose not to react, you're not just silencing yourself. You're forcing the other person to hear their own voice, to confront their own arguments without comfort of external resistance. That destabilizes because most people don't speak to express themselves. They speak to protect themselves, to convince themselves, to hide emptiness between what they say and who they are. When you remain silent, their disguise falls away. Social psychology shows that in confrontational situations, silence is perceived as judgment. It doesn't matter if you're just listening, the speaker begins feeling exposed, insecure. Without your response, they lose narrative control. The human brain goes into alert state. The fear and anxiety region activates. The other person starts projecting their own fears onto you. Is he judging me? Did he notice my insecurity? Does he know I'm bluffing? In this psychological battlefield, silence acts like invisible blade. It cuts where no one sees but everyone feels. Philosophy sensed this long before modern psychology confirmed it. For philosophy, average person lives as slave to their reactions. They act on impulse, react out of vanity, speak out of fear of being forgotten. The superior spirit, the one who masters themselves, remains silent because they know every word given is peace handed to enemy. Every emotional reaction is involuntary scream revealing where to attack. Moreover, silence has devastating effect on manipulators. People who thrive on emotional control of others depend on reactions to stay in game. When you don't react, you break the cycle and manipulator panics. They need your response to validate their position. Without it, they lose themselves, reveal themselves, show weakness they've tried so hard to hide. But there's something even deeper. Silence also triggers unresolved pains, activates traumas of rejection, abandonment, humiliation. Suddenly, the other person realizes they're not at center, that their words aren't enough, that their presence doesn't make impact. This is intolerable for narcissistic ego. When you remain silent, you're not just defending yourself, you're attacking where it hurts most, at center of illusion. This is why silence requires strength. It's uncomfortable not just for others, but for you as well, because it goes against everything taught, against impulse to react, justify, explain oneself. But precisely for this reason, it's powerful, because it demands mastery, and mastery is true power. Transforming silence into weapon. The time has come to stop merely understanding silence's power and start using it. Knowledge without practice is just dead theory. From now on, you'll learn to transform your silence into precision weapon, no longer defensive shield, but sharp blade ready to cut through others' masks at exact moment they least expect it. The first step is simple yet brutal. Be silent when your will screams for response. This requires strength because everything in you will want to react, justify itself, prove it's right. But that desire is poison. Every time you give in to it, You reveal you're still under others' control, still care what they think, still playing their game. True silence is born only when you kill that need. When you understand you owe nothing to anyone, that truth doesn't need to be spoken to exist. The second weapon of silence is observation. While others talk, get lost in explanations, try filling void with words, you listen, but not as someone waiting their turn to speak. You listen like hunter listens to prey's footsteps in forest. You perceive fears hidden between lines, subtle contradictions, insecurities disguised as arrogance. You store all this because when you speak, if you speak, it will be surgical, with precision of someone who masters others' emotional territory. The third weapon is time. Learn to let silence last. Pause is element of tension, and tension is power. While other person speaks, waiting for your reaction that doesn't come, they experience internal collapse. Discomfort grows, their mind begins filling void with assumptions, fears, paranoia. Simple look from you accompanied by silence can have more impact than 10 well-formulated sentences. The fourth weapon is unpredictability. When you master silence, you become unpredictable, and unpredictable is always feared. People don't know what to expect from you. When they don't know what to expect, they lose advantage. They become cautious, start measuring every word. You invert interaction logic. From reactive, you become gravitational center of conversation. At this point, silence isn't absence, it's pure dominance. But be careful, don't confuse silence with passivity. Philosophy was never advocate of weakness. The silence we're discussing here is active, tense, charged with intention. You're not withholding, you're preparing, choosing, positioning yourself with strength that doesn't need display to be felt. When right moment comes, moment when silence has already said everything needed, you can speak. Single sentence, precise comment, something that ends discussion not because it was louder, but because it was truer, deeper, more undeniable. Breaking free from submission. But there's darker truth we must address. Is there anything more perverse than being silenced? It's being conditioned to think silence is your only option, that swallowing anger, conceding in discussions, avoiding conflict at all costs is synonymous with maturity, that remaining silent is sign of balance. But what if this could be trap? Many times this type of silence isn't wisdom, it's disguised submission. Philosophy saw this with brutal clarity. What you call peace is often just your domesticated surrender. Have you noticed how some people take advantage of your calmness, your ability to listen, overlook, avoid confrontation? They push their ideas, impose their wills, occupy spaces that were yours, and you let them. You convince yourself it's not worth fighting, better to maintain harmony, not that big a deal. But truth is, you're paying very high price for this false peace. Worst part? You're being used by those who understand you'll never react. Philosophy spoke of slave morality, value system constructed by weak to survive in world dominated by strong. It's morality of resignation, guilt, being nice, invisible code that teaches you to nullify yourself, diminish yourself, conform, and still feel virtuous for it. But philosophy didn't write for those who resign themselves. It wrote for those who dare break these chains, who realize they're being used and decide to stop participating in their own submission. When you accept this type of silence, the one that swallows you from within, you're surrendering power without realizing it. You're being shaped by others' expectations. You're no longer yourself. You're what others need you to be. This is opposite of what philosophy called will to power. True will to power isn't to shout, isn't to dominate others. It's to dominate oneself. It's to regain control of your own narrative. It's to be silent not because you're afraid, but because you owe nothing to anyone. This silence of submission needs to die. In its place, silence of presence must be born, the one that doesn't bend, doesn't humiliate, doesn't apologize for existing. The one that stands amidst chaos and without saying word, changes situation's course. This is silence philosophy would respect. Silence of individual who has become master of themselves. Becoming the master, we've reached the final point, and now I need you to understand one thing with all clarity possible. Silence is not absence, not emptiness, not space between sentences. True silence is pure presence. It's mastery. It's sign that you're no longer reacting to world. You're shaping it with your mere existence. Philosophy never wrote for those content to survive. It wrote for those who want to transcend, who are willing to tear off masks society imposed, even if it hurts. The silence of the superior individual is not silence of oppressed nor coward. It's silence of warrior who has already won even before battle begins. It's stillness of one who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone because they know who they are, and more importantly, they know what they deserve. Now look at your life. How many times have you remained silent out of fear, guilt, not wanting to disturb? How many times have you let others decide for you, speak for you, trample over your truth? Enough. Philosophy would say living this way is offense to existence itself, that accepting this kind of silence is betraying yourself. From today on, your silence needs to change its tone. It needs to stop being escape and become invisible shout of authority, a boundary, affirmation of who you are, even if no one understands. Because who you are doesn't need to be understood, it needs to be lived. And that requires courage. Do you have that courage? If this message touched you, if something within awakened, write in comments. I choose the silence, not just so I know you made it this far, but so you can publicly affirm this choice, this commitment to yourself. If this resonated with you, hit like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder to stand tall and protect their peace. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay strong, take up space, and remember, respect starts with you.